Every conscious moment presents us with a fundamental dilemma: to act or not to act, to speak or remain silent, to embrace change or cling to familiarity. These daily decisions, both mundane and monumental, collectively shape the narrative of our lives. Yet beneath the surface of what appears to be simple choice-making lies a complex interplay of psychological forces, philosophical uncertainty, and biological reality, imperatives that have occupied human thought for millennia. The ancient Greek philosophers recognized decision-making as the building element of human virtue. Aristotle's concept of prohairesis, deliberate choice, positioned decision-making at the heart of ethical living. In the Nicomachean Ethics, he argued that we become just by performing just actions, courageous by performing courageous ones. Our choices literally form our character. This classical understanding reveals a profound truth. We are not merely making decisions, but through those decisions, we are making ourselves. Modern neuroscience has uncovered how this process manifests in our biology. The prefrontal cortex, that most human of brain regions, engages in a constant dialogue with older, more primitive neural structures when we deliberate. This explains why important decisions often feel like internal battles, because neurologically speaking, they are. The rational prefrontal cortex debates with the emotional limbic system, while the instinctual basal ganglia pushes for immediate action. Understanding this neurobiological tension helps explain why decision-making can feel so viscerally exhausting. The paradox of freedom in decision-making. Jean-Paul Sartre's existentialist declaration that man is condemned to be free captures the fundamental anxiety at the heart of human decision-making. This freedom is not the light, liberating experience we might imagine, but rather an immense responsibility that can paralyze as much as it empowers. The 20th century psychologist Erich Fromm explored this dynamic in his seminal work, Escape from Freedom, where he documented how people often flee from the burden of choice into the arms of authoritarianism, conformity, or compulsive behavior. Contemporary research in behavioral economics has quantified this phenomenon. Sheena Iyengar's famous JAM study demonstrated that while consumers are initially attracted to more options, their actual purchasing behavior reveals a counterintuitive truth. An overload of choices leads to decision paralysis. When presented with 24 varieties of jam, only 3% of customers made a purchase, compared to 30% when offered just 6 options. This research empirically validates what philosophers have long asserted, that unlimited choice does not equal unlimited freedom, but often its opposite. The psychological mechanism behind this paradox involves what psychologists call opportunity cost anxiety, the nagging fear that by choosing one option, we're missing out on something better. This is particularly acute in our modern era of limitless digital possibilities, where every swipe right implicitly suggests we might find something better with the next swipe. The result is what psychologist Barry Schwartz termed the paradox of choice, a state where abundance doesn't liberate, but instead enslaves us to perpetual dissatisfaction. The hidden architecture of our choices. Beneath our conscious deliberations operates a vast, unconscious decision-making apparatus that processes information far more extensively than our rational minds can comprehend. Modern cognitive science has revealed that the brain makes preliminary decisions up to 7 seconds before we're consciously aware of having made them, as demonstrated in the groundbreaking work of neuroscientist John Dylan Haynes. This challenges our most fundamental assumptions about free will and personal agency. If our brains have already initiated decisions before we're consciously aware of them, to what extent are we truly choosing at all? The implications ripple through every aspect of human life. From our legal systems, how do we assign responsibility if decisions are made unconsciously? To our personal relationships. How authentic are our professed feelings if they may be determined before we consciously experience them? Yet this doesn't render human decision-making meaningless. Rather, it suggests that our conscious mind serves not as the originator, but as the editor of our choices, reviewing, refining, and sometimes vetoing the proposals generated by our unconscious processing. This explains why some of our best decisions come from sleeping on it. We're allowing our unconscious processing systems time to work through the complexities. Emotional intelligence in decision-making. Antonio Damasio's revolutionary research on patients with damage to the ventromedial prefrontal cortex revealed a startling truth. Emotion is not the enemy of good decision-making, but its essential foundation. These patients could analyze information perfectly, but couldn't make even simple decisions, like what to eat or when to schedule an appointment. This research overturned centuries of philosophical tradition that positioned reason against emotion. Instead, we now understand that effective decision-making requires the integration of both systems. Our emotions serve as somatic markers, bodily signals that guide us toward or away from choices based on accumulated life experience. That gut feeling we sometimes dismiss is actually a sophisticated information processing system communicating its assessment. The practical implications are profound. It suggests that the most effective decision-makers aren't those who suppress their emotions, but those who develop the capacity to interpret their emotional signals accurately. This emotional intelligence allows us to distinguish between a genuine intuitive warning and mere anxiety, between authentic excitement and fleeting desire. Cognitive biases, the invisible filters on our choices. Our decision-making processes are systematically distorted by cognitive biases, mental shortcuts that often lead us astray. More than 180 such biases have been identified, each representing a way our minds deceive us during the decision-making process. The confirmation bias leads us to seek information that supports our existing beliefs while ignoring contradictory evidence. The sunk cost fallacy keeps us throwing good money after bad because we've already invested so much. The availability heuristic makes us overestimate the likelihood of vivid but rare events, like plane crashes, while underestimating common dangers, like heart disease. Understanding these biases is crucial because, as Daniel Kahneman's Nobel Prize-winning work showed, we cannot simply think harder to overcome them. They operate automatically, below the level of conscious awareness. The solution lies not in willpower, but in developing decision-making systems that account for our inherent limitations, using checklists, seeking dissenting opinions, and building in mandatory cooling-off periods for important choices. The decision-making labyrinth, navigating complex choices. The modern world presents us with decision matrices of unprecedented complexity. Unlike our ancestors who faced concrete survival choices, we now navigate abstract dilemmas with ambiguous outcomes. Psychologist Barry Schwartz's distinction between maximizers, those seeking perfect choices, and satisficers, those settling for good enough, reveals a fundamental tension in contemporary decision-making. Neuroscience shows this tension plays out in our brains as a battle between the prefrontal cortex, responsible for complex evaluation, and the anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors conflicts. When these regions fail to synchronize, we experience the paralysis of analysis. The ancient Greek concept of akrasia, weakness of will, finds its neural correlate in this dysregulation between knowing what we should do and actually doing it. Remarkably, studies of expert decision-makers, emergency room physicians, fire commanders, chess grandmasters, reveal they don't necessarily make better analyses, they make fewer analyses. Through pattern recognition honed by experience, they bypass exhaustive deliberation. This suggests true decision mastery may lie not in more thinking, but in better trained intuition. The spiritual dimensions of choice. Eastern and Western wisdom traditions converge on a paradoxical truth about decision-making. The more we try to control outcomes, the more we suffer. The Taoist principle of Wu Wei, effortless action, and the Christian concept of "thy will be done" both point towards surrendering the illusion of absolute control. Modern psychology echoes this in the concept of the illusion of control, our tendency to overestimate our influence over events. Studies show this illusion peaks during anxiety, explaining why major life decisions often feel disproportionately weighty. The spiritual art lies in distinguishing between healthy agency and hubristic overreach. Meditation research offers tangible benefits here. MRI scans of experienced meditators show decreased activity in the default mode network, responsible for self-referential thinking, and enhanced connectivity between cognitive and emotional centers. This neural configuration correlates with what spiritual traditions call right action, decisions that emerge from clarity rather than fear. The uncertainty principle of human choice. Heisenberg's principle in quantum physics finds a psychological parallel in decision-making. The more we scrutinize a choice, the more we alter its nature. This explains why prolonged deliberation often leads to worse decisions. The process itself changes our relationship to the options. The psychological immune system, a term coined by Daniel Gilbert, demonstrates how we subconsciously rationalize choices after making them. This explains why major life decisions, whom to marry, what career to pursue, rarely produce the lasting happiness we anticipate. Our minds are remarkably adept at rewriting narratives to justify our paths. This insight liberates us from the tyranny of perfect decisions. Since our psyche will adjust to most outcomes, the emphasis shifts from choosing correctly to choosing authentically, selections that align with our core values rather than projected fantasies. Practical wisdom, frameworks for decisive living, the 10-10-10 temporal lens. This decision tool asks, how will I feel about this in 10 days, 10 months, 10 years? It counteracts present bias by forcing temporal perspective. Research shows that people who regularly consider future selves make more prudent long-term decisions. The Premortem Technique. Unlike postmortems that analyze failures, premortems envision a decision's failure before committing. This protective pessimism surfaces risks that optimism blinds us to. Studies at the Wharton School found premortems improve decision accuracy by 30%. The 40-70 rule. Colin Powell's military wisdom suggests never deciding with less than 40% information, reckless, or more than 70%, paralysis. The sweet spot acknowledges that some uncertainty is irreducible, a lesson validated by research on good enough decision-making. The Eisenhower Matrix. By categorizing decisions based on urgency and importance, this tool combats the tyranny of the urgent. Neuroscience confirms that distinguishing true priorities from mere distractions conserves finite cognitive resources. The anti-fragility of wrong choices. Nassim Taleb's concept of anti-fragility, systems that gain from disorder, applies powerfully to decision-making. Viewed through this lens, wrong decisions become information-gathering missions that build wisdom. Psychological studies confirm that people with diverse life experiences make better decisions, not despite their mistakes, but because of them. This explains why the most decisive individuals are often those with the most failures. They've developed what researcher Gary Klein calls decision-making muscle memory, the tacit knowledge that only comes through lived experience. The French have a saying, "On apprend en tombant," we learn by falling. The ultimate decision-making paradox. After exploring decision-making from neural, psychological, philosophical, and practical perspectives, we arrive at the fundamental paradox. The quest for perfect decisions is itself the greatest impediment to good decisions. As the Zen proverb states, "The obstacle is the path." The most profound decisions are not made. They emerge from the confluence of self-knowledge, situational awareness, and the courage to act amid uncertainty. In the end, we don't so much choose our paths as reveal them through our choices. As the poet Antonio Machado wrote, "Wayfarer, there is no path. The path is made by walking." Every decision, then, is both an ending and a beginning, the closing of one possibility and the opening of another. The true art lies not in avoiding wrong turns, but in walking fully whatever path appears.